Welcome. We are really tackling a critical business paradox today. One that I think defines success or failure for so many high-level independent contractors.
It's a huge one.
We're looking at what separates the expert who, earns a comfortable living from the truly successful six-figure freelancer, the one who scales their value and actually controls their time.
Right.
And based on this really rich set of sources you shared with us, our focus is on these specialized technical professionals. We're using quantity surveying consultants, QS consultants as our main case study. But I want to be clear. Every single insight we're going to uncover here is applicable, whether you're, say, a systems architect, a fractional CMO, or even a compliance lawyer.
That paradox it's a persistent one, and it's a painful one. You have these masters of their craft, people who possess deep technical expertise, people who can genuinely deliver a massive commercial advantage to their clients, and yet they just hit a ceiling.
They get stuck.
They get stuck. And when they do, they assume they need, more marketing, or maybe a better website, or maybe even deeper skills.
Right, they think the answer is to learn more.
Exactly. But the sources, they synthesize all that noise, and they point to a single profound yet, an often overlooked point of failure.
And that failure point, that is the mission statement for this entire exploration we're doing on six-figure freelancers. It's a profound lack of clarity in their client offer.
That's it.
The problem isn't the knowledge itself, it's the commercial presentation of that knowledge. The sources just underscore this fact again and again. So we're going to use these detailed real-world examples to understand exactly how framing, how you articulate the value of your work is the absolute dictator of your income, not your inherent technical ability or your years of experience.
And if you are aiming for that six-figure freelancer status, this distinction is everything. It really is. It's the difference between earning a stable, if modest hourly rate for your time, and earning premium fees for a transformation. The core insight is simple, but as we'll see, it's intensely difficult for technically minded professionals to actually implement.
Because it's a mindset shift, isn't it?
It's a huge mindset shift. Consultants don't fail to scale because their skills are lacking. They fail because their commercial offer is unclear, it's vague, or it's just undifferentiated. And this shift from focusing on technical proficiency to focusing on a scalable commercial presentation, that is the single most powerful lever for growth.
Okay, so let's start with the trap itself, this undifferentiated offer, which the source material lays out perfectly. Why do these highly knowledgeable consultants, in this case QS professionals who manage multi-million-pound financial risk, why do they struggle so much to charge premium rates or scale their business beyond just one-to-one service delivery?
It really boils down to a fundamental cognitive bias among experts.
Right.
They believe that the sheer list of things they can do somehow proves their value.
Right, look at all my skills. Exactly. When these QS consultants, who are, let's be honest, brilliant at managing construction costs and contracts, when they try to articulate their value, they default to this massive laundry list of technical services. And this is the common, undifferentiated approach, and it's an absolute killer for commercial clarity.
And this is where we really need to translate the jargon immediately, just for our universal audience here. The sources list these specific broad services that commonly appear on consultant brochures, and they lead to client confusion and stagnation. Things like estimating, procurement, cost plans, BOQs, that's bill of quantities, tender evaluation, variations, and just general commercial support.
Right, and let's break that down into more generic knowledge work concepts because this applies to everyone. Estimating is basically project scoping and budget forecasting.
Yeah.
Procurement is vendor selection, contract setup. And a BOQ, the bill of quantities, for anyone outside of construction, it's essentially this comprehensive, highly detailed, itemized list of every single material, every component, every scope requirement. So if I'm a software consultant, my equivalent list is something like, we offer requirements gathering, code refactoring, cloud migration planning, and infrastructure auditing.
Exactly.
Or if I'm a legal consultant, it's contract drafting, due diligence, compliance research, and litigation support. It's the list of capabilities.
It is. And while that list is technically accurate in describing what you can do, we need to ask the crucial question. Why is this list so problematic from the client's perspective?
And the source nails it.
It does. It is described as too broad, too vague, and most importantly, too interchangeable.
When a client gets this massive menu, their initial reaction isn't, wow, this person can save me millions, is it?
No, not at all. Their reaction is typically anxiety. They think, okay, this person can do anything. which means I have to figure out what they should do for my specific urgent problem.
So the burden is on the client.
The burden is entirely on the client. The client is seeing a tool shed full of really specialized instruments, but they haven't been given the blueprint to build a house.
That's a great analogy.
And because the offering is so broad and so focused on technical execution, they mentally categorize the consultant with every other general QS firm, or even worse, as an internal overflow resource, essentially a high-level temp.
Wow. Okay. And that brings us directly to the cost of that ambiguity, which is just the immediate stymieing of growth. Ambiguity forces the client to assume all the risk and, the labor of defining the solution. When a vague offer is presented, clients hesitate. And hesitation in the sales cycle is the absolute antithesis of scaling, isn't it?
It is. A high-value professional should be eliminating client uncertainty, not creating more of it.
But I want to challenge that a bit because the high-skill professionals we're talking about here, the QS consultant, the expert software engineer, they are capable of solving any number of problems. So isn't it just a natural defense mechanism to list everything they can do, just to show maximum competence?
It is a natural defense mechanism, I agree, but commercially it's self-sabotage. You are showing competence in execution, but you are failing to demonstrate leadership and strategy. If I, the client, hire you, I'm wondering, am I hiring a resource to execute my plan, or am I hiring an advisor to develop a better plan for me? The laundry list of tasks positions you as the former every time.
Ah, okay. That is the critical distinction then. You're talking about the status trap.
Precisely.
Yeah.
When a consultant offers that laundry list of tasks, estimating, BOQ creation, tender evaluation, they inherently position themselves as general resource support.
Just a pair of hands.
A very skilled pair of hands. Yes. You're selling high-level administrative or execution labor, and it's billed by the hour or by the day. It's focused on the effort you expend. Your value is measured by time spent, by your diligence, by your capacity.
So the client says, I have 100 hours of BOQ analysis that needs doing, and the consultant says, great, I will do those 100 hours. They're simply offering to fill a labor gap.
That's it. Now contrast that with the desired status, the high-value commercial advisor. The advisor is paid for knowing which strategic leverage points to pull and when to pull them, and then guaranteeing the subsequent outcome.
So it's not about the hours?
It's never of the hours. It's about something like eliminating 90% of tender overruns. The advisor determines the strategy and the desired result. The resource just executes the specific technical tasks required.
The advisor sells the destination.
The advisor sells the destination, the resource sells the vehicle and the gas. And this status difference resource versus advisor, that is the critical friction point. It's what prevents skilled professionals from achieving that scalable six-figure freelancer status.
Okay.
You just cannot scale effectively when you're viewed merely as extra, very expensive hands.
So for the listener who might be in digital marketing or finance or law, the principle is completely universal. If you sell tasks, whether it's code maintenance or research or content creation, you're interchangeable. You're easily compared on price and hourly rate. But if you sell specific, defined, guaranteed commercial outcomes, then you become essential. The underlying skill set might be identical, but the perceived value is just exponentially higher when you sell the outcome.
And that move from, I can do anything and I'll bill you hourly for it, to, I solve this one specific high-stakes, expensive problem for this defined client type using a predictable system. That is the moment. That is the moment the consultant transitions from being a cost center, an overhead expense, to a verifiable, highly valuable profit or risk mitigation center.
And that's the foundation we need to build on.
That's the foundation.
Okay, so let's unpack this critical transition. If a general task list is the problem, what's the blueprint? What does a clear, scalable, high-value offer actually look like? This is where the source material gets really rigorous. It provides a checklist of 6 non-negotiable pillars that define a six-figure freelancer's successful commercial offer.
And these pillars are like the structural scaffolding. They force the expert to move beyond their comfort zone of technical execution and into the commercial domain of productization.
Productization, that's a key word.
It's everything. If your existing offer is missing even one of these pillars, the sources suggest that scaling will be immensely difficult because you haven't sufficiently de-risked the engagement for that high-value client.
So let's look at the first one, which is arguably the most counterintuitive pillar for any expert. Pillar 1. Specificity of problem and client. The offer has to be laser-focused on a specific problem and built around a defined client type. Why is this radical narrowing, this niching, so necessary for scaling to high figures? I mean, doesn't it limit your potential business?
It feels like it does, and this is the paradox of the niche. It is the single greatest psychological hurdle for the highly skilled professional to overcome.
Mm.
They believe that by narrowing, they're closing doors. In reality, they are defining the one door that only they can walk through. If you say you help everyone with everything commercial, you are instantly competing with every single QS firm out there, large and small. You're generic.
You're an ocean of competency. But a client is just looking for a small, specialized boat to ferry them across one very dangerous river.
That's it, exactly. By defining a specific client type, let's say mid-sized residential developers who are struggling to lock down costs before pre-construction tender, and then focusing on a specific painful problem like eliminating unexpected tender overruns that eat up their contingency budgets, you achieve instant resonance.
The client sees themselves in your offer.
Immediately. Your solution appears tailor-made, highly relevant, and urgent. The client doesn't need to ask if you can help. They read the offer, and they recognize themselves and their pain immediately.
And this has to lead to efficiency, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you're that specific, your marketing materials, your case studies, your entire pitch, it all speaks directly to that one pain point.
It eliminates the client's need to qualify you. Narrowing the focus, paradoxically, makes it dramatically easier to market and sell because you've signaled high value and specialization before the price is even discussed.
So generic knowledge work competes on price.
It has to. Whereas specialized, clearly defined solutions compete on expertise and on certainty.
Okay, let's move to pillar 2. Predictability in packaging. A scalable offer must be packaged into a predictable process. Now, as a consultant, I'm used to providing bespoke, flexible service. So why does rigidity in packaging suddenly become a virtue here?
Because predictability de-risks the engagement for the client. And clients will pay enormous premiums to eliminate risk and uncertainty. When a QS consultant bills hourly for, quote, commercial support, the client has two massive uncertainties. What's the final cost going to be and what's the timeline for results? It just feels open-ended, like an ever-running taxi meter.
Right. If I'm a client and I see a list of tasks, I'm thinking, well, how many hours will that BOQ review actually take? Is it going to be 50 hours or is it going to be 150 hours? I have no idea.
Exactly. Packaging removes that fear. It means defining the solution as a structured, fixed engagement, a 6-week financial lockdown system, a 4-step compliance audit, a 3-month lead generation strategy. You see the difference? The consultant is no longer selling labor. They are selling the X-week system that guarantees Y outcome.
So, okay, if the scope is fixed and the price is fixed, doesn't that inherently risk the consultant underestimating the labor and losing money if the scope shifts unexpectedly? I mean, this has to be the core fear among professionals who are just used to billing by the hour.
That is a brilliant point, and it's the primary internal resistance that people have. The answer is twofold. First, high-value packaging is only possible because the focus is specific, which was pillar 1.
Right. It all connects.
It all connects.
Yeah.
When you niche down, that unexpected scope creep becomes, well, predictable scope creep because you've run the same system dozens of times for the same client profile. You become a master at scoping that exact problem. Second, the packaging process forces the consultant to build in contingencies and really strict boundaries, which are themselves part of the value proposition. You are selling a standardized solution, not a customized favor. If the client insists on deviating from the scope, that becomes a defined variation, which, ironically, any good QS consultant should understand exactly how to manage.
That's a great point. So that packaging, it converts a flexible, hard-to-scale hourly rate into a structured product, one that can be replicated, systematized, and sold repeatedly by the consultant, often without them having to personally do every single task in the system.
Yes.
The client buys the system, not the time.
Correct. And that predictability, knowing the outcome, the steps, and the exact price, that is a luxury that complex, high-stakes clients are absolutely delighted to pay a massive premium for.
Okay, now for pillar 3, financial confidence. The offer must be priced confidently. We are talking about pricing that moves from, say, fair compensation for time to a necessary investment for transformation.
This one is pure psychology. Low pricing signals desperation. It signals a lack of faith in the result, and it signals generality. It tells the client, hey, I'm an easy hire because I'm cheap, but you probably shouldn't expect a transformative result. High, confident pricing when it's tied to a clear outcome, which we'll get to. It signals specialized value, proven results, and, crucially, a seriousness of purpose. If you are solving a multi-million-pound problem, your solution must cost tens of thousands to signal that it is sufficient to solve that problem.
It sounds like the price is the first piece of marketing collateral. If I charge, say, £10,000 for a program that solves a £250,000 risk, I'm signaling that I believe my solution is necessary and effective. I've only charged £1,000. I'm signaling that I'm maybe just doing a quick check.
Exactly right. You are trading your unique expertise for a guaranteed commercial advantage. The client perceives this price not as a cost like paying a utility bill, but as an investment necessary to secure the specific, high-value outcome you've promised. You're forcing them to consider the magnitude of the problem you solve. If the QS consultant saves a residential developer from £50,000 in unexpected cost overruns, the £10,000 fee is the 5x return on investment. That is a confident price, and it's completely justified by the ROI.
This is a huge shift for technical experts who often have, imposter syndrome about sales. They focus on effort, not on value.
They do. They ask themselves, is the price fair for the hours I'm going to put in?
Yeah.
The successful six-figure freelancer asks a different question. They ask, is the price fair for the economic result I'm delivering? And that latter question is what allows for 10x pricing.
And finally, pillars 4, 5, and 6, which sort of work as a unified unit, simplicity and outcome. The offer must be easy for clients to understand and absolutely mandatory for scale. It must be outcome-driven, not task-driven.
Simplicity is all about eliminating sales friction. If I can't explain your offering to my boss in 15 seconds, I am not going to buy it. Complexity is a sales killer.
Right.
The successful offer is immediately understandable.
Okay.
We fix tender overruns by 80% in 6 weeks using our proprietary audit system. Problem, solution, result. Simple.
And the outcome focus. That is the essential mindset transformation we were talking about. The QS consultant is no longer selling BOQ analysis or estimating services. Those are just tasks focused on effort. They are selling risk eliminated, budget controlled, commercial certainty, or profit margin protected. These are outcomes, and they're focused on results.
The client does not care how diligently you perform the task. They just don't. They care that they will not face a financial disaster in 6 months. That's it. The outcome-driven offer guarantees that result. It shifts the entire dialogue away from how much labor will this require to what is the predictable positive financial position I will achieve when this is complete.
And that difference, which is detailed so well in the sources, is the psychological foundation that justifies every single massive price multiple we're about to discuss.
It is. It's the entire game.
Okay, we've covered the theoretical framework. Now let's get into the quantitative proof. This is where the sources provide this stark, undeniable comparison that demonstrates the immediate, powerful impact of shifting from a task-based offer to an outcome-based one.
And we absolutely must anchor the conversation, the baseline value first. The sources state that a client will pay approximately £1,000 for vague, undifferentiated QS support.
£1,000.
£1,000. This is what the market sets as the price for general resource labor. This price point signals a transactional relationship time for money, and it signals a low perceived value. The consultant is seen as replaceable.
So that £1,000, that is the ceiling for someone who is selling tasks, not transformation. It's the price you pay when the consultant's offering is listed as hours logged or general commercial assistance. It's a necessary cost, sure, but it's an expense that the client is always trying to minimize.
Now, hold that number in your mind, £1,000. And contrast this sharply with what the same client will pay for a framed, specific, outcome-driven package using the exact same underlying skills. 10,000 plus.
10,000 plus.
We are talking about a guaranteed 10x multiple purely because the service was packaged, clearly defined, and sold based on the result, not the effort.
This is the most crucial takeaway for any aspiring six-figure freelancer. You don't need to go learn a new programming language or get a new degree. You need to change your sales narrative and your commercial framework. You already possess the value. You just haven't translated it into a commercially viable, high-value product.
That's it. It's the difference between selling a commodity and selling intellectual property that's contained in a scalable system. When you sell time, you are capped by the hours in the week.
Right.
When you sell a systemized, high-value outcome, the price is capped only by the magnitude of the problem you solve.
So let's deep dive into the specific examples provided in the source and analyze why they command that 10x price multiple. We need to dissect the psychological contract that's happening in each of these examples.
Let's do it.
Okay, take example 1, a 6-week pre-construction cost assurance program.
So what is the client really buying here? They are buying a defined, time-bound guarantee of financial control before they pour a single drop of concrete. In construction, The risk is massive.
Yeah.
Every single day that passes with financial ambiguity costs real money. This program uses the QS's estimating and cost planning skills. Those are the tasks. But it sells the elimination of future uncertainty. It sells the assurance that the budget is locked down and secured. And that 6-week time frame is key because it provides instant predictability. That's pillar 2.
Right. The client is doing the ROI calculation in their head. They know that a surprise £20,000 cost during construction will delay the project and cost them perhaps £50,000 in financing and lost revenue. So paying £12,000 up front to guarantee that doesn't happen, it's just an obvious financial decision.
It's a no-brainer. The cost assurance program is perceived as an insurance policy, not as an expense. Now, let's translate that universally. For a software consultant, this is the difference between selling security auditing, which is the task, and selling a 90-day enterprise security lockdown and certification system. That's the outcome, with predictable timelines. For a fractional CFO, it's the difference between offering monthly financial reporting and offering a 12-week cash flow optimization program guaranteed to increase working capital by 15%.
The specificity makes the value tangible. Okay, let's look at example 2, a tender readiness audit that eliminates cost risk.
This one focuses entirely on prevention and risk elimination. Every client knows the devastating impact of unforeseen costs that are discovered late in the tendering process, and they often stem from poorly drafted scope documents or BOQs. This audit uses the consultant's existing skills in evaluation and procurement, but it frames the offer as a proactive defense mechanism. The client is not paying for a report. They're paying for a safety net that protects their financial stability and their project timeline.
This is a classic case of selling the antidote instead of the medicine. The client is afraid of getting sick, losing money during tender, and this is the guaranteed vaccination.
And critically, the high price here is justified by the speed of discovery. Because the consultant is specialized, pillar 1 again, they can often spot the potential 50 kmk error in an hour just by using their established system.
Sure.
But they aren't charging for the hour. They're charging for the elimination of the 50K loss. That's why a high price is necessary. It signals the gravity of the expertise required to deliver that fast, decisive result.
And you can contrast this with a low-value scenario. A client might hire the QS consultant at £1,000 to just review the tender documents. The consultant spends 10 hours reviewing, maybe finds nothing major, and bills £1,000. The client sees £1,000 spent for no tangible gain.
Whereas with the audit, the client is paying for the certainty. The certainty that the audit was rigorous and that the risk has been eliminated, even if no problems were found. The perceived value of risk elimination is just vastly higher than the perceived value of document review.
So for a specialized legal advisor, this is the difference between selling due diligence research and selling a compliance framework implementation program that guarantees regulatory alignment within 60 days.
Perfect example.
And finally, example 3, a variation strategy that protects commercial position.
This example is pure defensive strategy. It's focused on future financial security in what is an inherently chaotic environment. In construction, variations, changes to the scope, typically due to unforeseen issues, they are massive profit killers.
Right.
They are where disputes arise, relationships fracture, and costs just skyrocket. A consultant offering this specific strategy is offering protection against future litigation and profit evaporation.
The task involved might be complex contract review and documentation standardization and process implementation. But the outcome is the safeguarding of the client's entire profit margin over the whole course of the project.
Exactly. The value is assessed not by the days spent writing the strategy, but by the potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions saved through successful negotiation and legal protection later on. For the 6-figure freelancer, this means charging an anchor price that reflects the potential financial damage being averted.
So that £10,000 plus price point, it suddenly feels like an essential preventative investment, not some optional expense.
It does.
The crux of the matter, as the sources demonstrate so clearly, is this unavoidable truth. It is the same skills, but the different framing. And this massive difference in perceived value, a 10x multiplier, that is the barrier between the general consultancy that struggles to pay the bills and the 6-figure freelancer who scales effortlessly by focusing on predictable outcomes and structured systems.
They move the entire conversation from how much do you charge per hour to what is the guaranteed return on investment for this specific program. And that reframing is worth every single percentage point of that tenfold price increase.
When we talk about shifting the offer from tasks to these packaged outcomes, we aren't just adjusting a line on a website. This decision to define and package the offer clearly, It has these massive, comprehensive, far-reaching effects across the entire professional business model. It really changes everything.
Absolutely. The clarity of the offer is like the gravity well that dictates the entire operational ecosystem of the consultancy. It's the highest leverage point in the business, by far.
So let's start with client attraction. If I run a vague, undifferentiated QS business who's walking through my door,
A vague general offer attracts price-sensitive clients, people who are only looking for a quote on labor. They treat the consultant as a vendor, not as an expert. And they're typically poorly organized themselves and require excessive hand-holding because they haven't even clarified their own problem.
a headache basically, but a highly specific, outcome-driven offer, like that tender readiness audit.
Well, that attracts fundamentally better clients. It attracts clients who are already focused on solving a critical pain point, who understand the relationship between investment and guaranteed results, and who are ready to move quickly. The specificity of the offer acts as a crucial pre-qualification filter.
So you're not wasting time.
You're not. It ensures you only spend time talking to clients who value transformation over cheap labor.
Okay, second, let's talk about growth velocity. So how fast you grow. We've established the 10x price differential, which means you need fewer clients to achieve that six-figure freelancer status. But what about the actual mechanics of growth?
Faster growth stems directly from simplified referral pathways. If your offer is just, we do BOQs and estimating, a satisfied client can only really say, yeah, they did great BOQs for me. That's not a strong referral, is it?
It's pretty weak.
But if your offer is, we run the 6-week financial lockdown system, a satisfied client says, hey, if you are worried about pre-construction cost creep, you have to call this person. They run the system that guaranteed our budget.
That packaging makes the service inherently easier to talk about. It's easier to refer and ultimately just easier to sell.
Dramatically so. And that leads directly to the third ripple effect, which is reduced sales resistance. If a client immediately understands the specific, measurable problem you solve and the guaranteed outcome you deliver, the sales conversation shifts entirely.
How so?
You spend less time trying to convince them you are capable. That's assumed by the price and the packaging. And you spend more time discussing the logistics of implementation. You move from justifying your existence to strategizing the solution.
And this determines that ultimate perception we talked about, resource versus advisor.
Exactly. The consultant with the vague task list is perceived as an interchangeable resource, someone they hire to clear a backlog, someone who requires management. The 6-figure freelancer with the packaged, outcome-based offer is perceived as a high-value commercial advisor, someone they consult before they make a major financial or strategic decision.
And that's where the value is.
The advisor is involved at the critical decision-making stage, and that is where the premium value truly lies.
So if a highly skilled professional, whether it's our QS consultant or the systems architect, if they're stuck focusing internally on just refining their technical proficiency, they are missing the highest leverage point entirely. The lack of scale isn't a technical issue at all. It's a packaging and a commercial narrative failure.
And that brings us to the synthesis and the core diagnosis from the sources. If a consultancy feels stuck, if their revenue is capped or volatile or just erratic, if they aren't reaching the level of a successful 6-figure freelancer, the reason is almost universally that their offer is unclear or invisible.
That concept of the invisible offer, that's crucial. How exactly does an expert-level offer become invisible, even if it's listed right there on a website?
It's invisible when the true commercial value, the specific outcome the client deeply desires, is buried beneath layers of jargon, technical details, and task listings. The client scrolls through the list of BOQ analysis and procurement services, but they never see the solution, which is financial certainty.
Right.
The value is just obscured by these generic technical terms. If the client cannot articulate what they are buying from you in one clear sentence, the offer is functionally invisible to their commercial needs. It's an expert speaking technical language to an investor who only speaks commercial language.
It sounds like the consultant is selling the ingredients, but the client is only interested in the finished, guaranteed cake. And if the client has to spend time baking, they are not paying a premium.
That is the perfect analogy. And this diagnosis, the unclear or invisible offer, is the universal constraint on scaling knowledge work. It applies directly to you, the listener, in assessing your own professional potential. If you want a quick way to gauge the potential for scale, look at any complex service offering. Is it a list of tasks? We offer website design, SEO, and social media management. Or is it a guarantee of a specific defined outcome? We implement a 90-day lead generation system guaranteed to increase qualified leads by 30%.
The former is selling time and labor and variability. The latter is selling certainty, predictability, and scale. And that certainty is where the six-figure freelancer justifies the premium price.
The ability to articulate value in terms of certainty and measurable outcomes is the single skill, separate from technical mastery, that unlocks premium prices and allows for truly scalable independence. Hashtag tag outro.
This has been a really intensive exploration into the physics of value realization. We started with the paradox of the highly skilled professional who couldn't scale, using the quantity surveyor consultant as our detailed example, and we pinpointed the single point of failure, the offer itself. The core takeaway is, I think, crystal clear. Scaling success for the six-figure freelancer depends entirely on the clarity and the packaging of your offer. It requires moving from general resource support, which nets a price point around £1,000, to outcome-based proprietary programs, which can easily command £10,000 or more.
Right.
And that's even when utilizing the exact same underlying skill set.
The technical ability of the professionals we studied was never the issue. It just wasn't. The limiting factor was their inability to translate that high-level technical skill into a low-friction, high-value commercial product. The lesson here is, I think, unavoidable. As a specialist, you have to sell the destination, not merely the plane ticket or the fuel. You have to sell the predictable result of your expertise.
It is a profound shift in perspective, isn't it? Moving from focusing on effort to focusing on the economic result, and to leave you with a final provocative thought that builds on the material we've covered today, something designed for you to test this framework in your own world.
If you are looking at your own work, or maybe analyzing the commercial model of a company you invest in or lead, how much of their public-facing identity is focused on what they do? The technical tasks they perform, like BOQ production or code maintenance, versus what specific, defined, high-stakes problem they solve.
That's the question.
What are the financial outcomes they guarantee, like cost assurance or risk elimination? And where in your own professional life could repackaging a core, complex task changing the framing from effort to a measurable, guaranteed outcome, drastically alter your perceived value and open the door to significant scaling and that coveted six-figure freelancer status?
That is the question that separates those who are constantly busy from those who are truly successful. Thank you for joining us for this crucial breakdown of scaling value. We'll see you next time.